You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum.
Welcome to Precinct 444, where we explore the people, partnerships, and purpose behind modern law enforcement and community trust. Today's episode is about something that goes beyond enforcement, uniforms, or titles. It's about belonging, dignity, and unity. For decades, law enforcement agencies across the country have built an extraordinary partnership with Special Olympics, standing shoulder to shoulder with athletes, families, and communities. It's a relationship rooted in service, but fueled by connection, and it continues to change lives on all sides. I'm honored to be joined today by Lieutenant Kellie Renfro from the Dallas Police Department, a longtime law enforcement champion of Special Olympics, and Jordan Baccus from Special Olympics, Texas, who helps bring this mission to life every day. Together, we're going to talk about why this partnership matters, how it builds trust and community, and what it shows us about the power of law enforcement to bring people together for good. Thank you both so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
So, Jordan, I want to start with you. Can you talk to our listeners who may be new to Special Olympics? Maybe they don't know about the history of the partnership with law enforcement. So what's at the heart of the movement with Special Olympics, and why is it so important to individuals, families, and communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having us today. The mission of Special Olympics is to provide year-round sports training and athletic competition for individuals with intellectual disabilities. We like to say that we serve individuals 0 to 99. We have all kinds of different programs from young athletes to unified champion school programs. We are also the largest free healthcare provider for individuals with intellectual disabilities. And we have those athletes that are in their 60s and 70s still competing with us. So that is the mission of Special Olympics. And the relationship with the law enforcement torch run goes just as deep as that. You know, our first responders are the largest grassroots fundraiser and public awareness vehicle for Special Olympics globally. This is a global movement. It's not just limited to one state or maybe just in North America. And it started back in 1981 by a police chief by the name of Richard Lemunion. So Chief Lemunion, who I've had the pleasure of meeting a few different times. And it just started by going out to a track and field meet, supporting some athletes, handing some medals. They got the best hugs and high fives that they could have ever gotten. And they decided, you know what, we're going to step this up and support them even more. And they decided to run the torch into that track and field meet. And that has just sparked this global movement. So this has been going on for decades now. And it is one of the best things that our first responders and law enforcement can get involved with.
Yeah, you know, that so interesting. I didn't realize all of the connection to Special Olympics that law enforcement had before I joined, before I started my career in law enforcement. And I remember back to the first time I did the torch run, and being involved in that and seeing at the end of that the athletes and celebrating them, and them running along with us and carrying the torch, and just the excitement that everybody had. It was hard not to get caught up in it and be excited about it every year, and then expanding into other, doing other activities like polar plunges and those sorts of things, which I've gotten a lot of people over the years to do polar plunges. Sometimes they're grateful at the end of the experience. Sometimes they're just that was great. I'll donate, but I never want to do that again. But the excitement that is generated and the excitement on the faces of the athletes makes it worthwhile at the end of the day. So it's really exciting to have you all on to talk about that. And Kellie, for along those lines, how did you first get involved with Special Olympics, and what made that connection resonate with you as a law enforcement officer?
So, I've been involved for several years now. The first time I volunteered for Special Olympics was when I was in high school dance team. We would volunteer sometimes, but it really kind of hit me differently when I ended up having a child with a disability. So my youngest actually has Down syndrome. And I just think it just so happened that when I was pregnant, I got placed into an office with the people who ran the Special Olympics for the department at the time. And honestly, I didn't even know that our department was involved. I didn't realize the relationship with law enforcement and Special Olympics. So for someone who was, back when I was going through that pregnancy and dealing with all, the fears that are related to having a child with a disability, being around individuals who were supporting and kind of in that lifestyle, I was able to learn so much about it and just kind of dive in, and it helped me really kind of take away that fear. So that's something that, there's this fear for, and this is outside of law enforcement. So for individuals who have ID, or they have a child or a family member with ID, there's a certain level of fear that's always kind of there. But when you go somewhere like a Special Olympics event, it's somewhere that you can be fearless. The athletes can be fearless. The parents can let go of their fears. And so I've really had the opportunity to experience that from both sides. So seeing how, my youngest is actually 6 years old now, and he's a Special Olympics athlete. So being able to be on both sides of that, being able to help parents and athletes release those fears and just be free and have a good time and belong. And then being able to bring that into my law enforcement community and seeing my coworkers and friends go out and interact with people with ID. And it just really, it warms my heart. And so it does resonate quite a bit because I'm so involved on both sides of it.
I appreciate you sharing that. And, I think that's, it's one of those things that can be tough to talk about, even feeling, acknowledging that there's a fear of sort of the unknown going into that, and not knowing what to expect, but having organizations like Special Olympics, to be there, to just at the end of the day, we all want the same things, regardless of whether we have certain disabilities or not. We all want to be included in things. We all want to be supported. And I that's always been one of the best things about Special Olympics that I've seen over the time that I've been involved with them is just, nobody feels like they don't belong when they're at a Special Olympics event. And I think that's always been, one of those things that is so interesting about the connection then to law enforcement circles, and how I think in law enforcement, we don't always do a great job of showing that we are there and part of the community. And I think this is one of those ways that I think if we talk about it more, not because we want, to say, look at us, we're so great or anything like that, but just being a visible force for good. I think we can do more of that to raise the visibility of organizations like Special Olympics. So, and I think, oh, go ahead, jump in.
Sorry, Josh, I was going to
ahead.
kind of piggyback off that point of being included, right? We have an international law enforcement torture conference every year. And a few years ago, we were in Chicago, and we take athletes from Texas, and you'll see a lot of athletes from all over. I mean, we have athletes from Australia that come, from the UK, from, all 50 states. It's fantastic. And we have a program dinner that we do. And we had an athlete get up in front of us as staff who were there, our torture run coordinators, all of our law enforcement, and he told his story. And it was the first time that we heard his story in depth. And at the very end of that, and I'm probably going to get emotional thinking about it because every time I talk about it, I do get emotional. But at the very end, he said, Special Olympics was the first place that I felt included. And it was the very first time that no one ever asked me what was wrong with me. And I was just a part of. So I think that and to feel included by our law enforcement, and for him to just on a whim stand up and tell his story. I mean, we were all crying at the end of it. It was a very moving and impactful story. And it was, 5-10 minutes, but for him to say that at the very end and to thank law enforcement and he literally said, for having my six, that was a big deal. And the fact that no one had yet to ask him what was wrong with him. And he was just part of the group, part of the crew.
That's a fantastic story. I'm so glad you shared that. And I think it really demonstrates just how powerful the relationship is. I mean, some of the high points in my career I can think back on are, presenting, medals and, different tokens from our agency to Special Olympics athletes after, events like Torture Run and things like that, and at the games themselves. And, I have very clear memories of those, whereas a lot of other parts of my career I don't have as clear a memory of, and so, I think it goes beyond those competitions. And, I'm really curious to continue this sort of theme in the conversation about what impact beyond the competitions, on confidence, on independence and inclusion, does Special Olympics really help with beyond that competition part?
I think it adds so much to I mean, there's just like the sense of belonging, the sense of having a community. At Dallas PD, we actually have something called a unified delegation. So unified is when you have people with ID and without playing on the same team, same partner. We have partners and you're competing for medals together. So we actually compete with Topgolf. We have a Topgolf team. So each of us are partnered up. So I do have a Special Olympics athlete who's my partner. Her name's Shannon. She's actually world champion golfer. She's gone to Worlds before. She's come back with medals, and I am not a golfer. So it was really cool. She taught me a lot. She taught me about how to hold the club, how to hit. But I think it gives them a sense of purpose as well, because after we won our medal, we got gold our very first time. This is my first medal ever. And of course, I got emotional, and she gave me a big hug, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm so proud of you." So it just brings this sense of purpose, sense of belonging. I mean, she gives my kids gifts for their birthdays. There's just this sense of you belong, you have a purpose, you have friends, you have people who love you. It goes so much more beyond the games. Like you said, we're truly family and we're friends.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I can, sorry, Josh, I was saying I can piggyback off of that. So it's really cool. Like, what we do here in Texas, we do a lot of really cool stuff, specifically here in North Texas. We have all kinds of different things that we do with law enforcement. So I work with a ton of different departments, and I will say the Dallas Police Department is one of our bigger departments in the state of Texas. It is the one that is all in 100%. We have quite a few of those. And what we see from DPD and how we got the DPD unified team started, that just started a movement in Texas for other departments to kind of follow suit. And now we have athletes that are so comfortable. They have joined our athlete leadership program where, they have training and they can go out, they will talk to businesses. They go out side by side with our law enforcement, and they're talking about the programs that we offer with Special Olympics, how they can support Special Olympics through donations, how they can come out to events. And you just see that confidence build. And it starts at the ground level with the relationship with our officers. We do this at National Night Out now. We have our athletes, they get to go ride out with our officers and go to the National Night Out block parties that we do. And they're out there in the community. They are telling their stories. They are talking with community members. And we didn't really see that before. And now we're just seeing that grow more and more and more every year, every event that we're doing. And it starts with those relationships at the ground level, like Lieutenant Renfro was talking about.
So what do you think is so unique about this relationship that's developed over time with law enforcement agencies supporting Special Olympics? This relationship goes back decades, right? And so, why do you think the partnership has endured and grown stronger over time? What about law enforcement, do you think specifically?
I mean, there's like law enforcement is always changing, but there's something that's always kind of stays the same, right? Because despite what the community may think, despite what the public may think, through highs and lows, through politics, the view from the athletes as a whole doesn't change. They're always going to look at us as heroes. And I think we as law enforcement feel like we can't let them down. We have to live up to that. So even though, sometimes that there's public hate, sometimes that, people don't love what we do, but as a whole, we do care about the community. We want to make our community stronger. We want to make people feel safe and included as a whole. And I think that we really feel this sense of we cannot let these athletes down. So it continues because we want to continue doing what we can to make them proud of us. Like so many law enforcement officers say, we go out there to volunteer and provide our time, and we do it for the athletes, as we say, but truly we get more out of it than I think they do so many times. It really does. It changes us. And I've seen it. And I've said this many times. I see the change in officers who actually go out there and volunteer. Go out one time, you're going to be hooked, right? We don't need to volunteer anybody to do this. You go out once and you're going to be hooked. But I will say that it does change the way that officers interact. It changed the way that I interact. It changed the way that I parent. It changed the way that I talk to people. You're going to see changes in the way that officers communicate with the public. You're going to see a greater sense of empathy, more patience. I mean, really, I know I've kind of maybe jumped a little bit, but it makes such a huge difference in law enforcement officers. I think everyone should have to do it at least once. You only have to tell them once, and you won't have to tell them again.
No, that's definitely true. And I think that's the perfect sort of segue, to really talk more about, how does it change, and influence, interactions with the community. I mean, I think you touched on, some of those things there, but I think that's one of the big takeaways from this conversation, I think, is, we're always looking for ways to better connect with our communities and law enforcement and, improve relationships and things like that. And there's this organization, Special Olympics, that makes some of those things easier and does have the ability to sort of influence how officers connect with the community. So I'm interested to hear from, sort of both of you on this, from what you've seen. How have you seen communities and law enforcement change over time and in their interactions?
Yeah, I think what I see, and we have large, right, metropolitan area, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then we have our small communities out in East Texas, Mineola. Tyler is a smaller community. Then we can go down south of DFW, and these are just cities that I work with, to Midlothian, to Paris, Texas, Sherman, right? So what we see with our relationship with our law enforcement and our first responders in the community is when we open these events, which all of our events are open to the public, we see a greater buy-in with that. We have community members from our largest cities to our smallest cities that are out in full force. They want to support our athletes. They want to support the families of our athletes. Then when you bring in our first responders and our law enforcement, and it's not just our community engagement officers, and I know we'll probably talk about that here in a little bit, but when we bring out our law enforcement torch run officers and they're out there and they're also, in the thick of it, they're helping set up tents, they're helping tear down, they're literally in full uniform in sand pits in 95-degree weather, measuring long jump, right? That just brings the whole community together. And I think it kind of humanizes our officers a little bit for community members to see that. And it just makes our communities a lot stronger in that sense. And then when you see the love and appreciation that our athletes have for our officers, I mean, like Lieutenant Renfro was saying, you go out to one event, you're going to get the best hugs, the best high fives. I mean, get ready for hugs, bring lots of stickers, as I always tell my officers. But that also humanizes it for the families of our athletes, for the community members. I mean, we have city council members who come out and they're also doing the same thing. We just had a cycling meet down in Mineola, real small town. And the superintendent was out there timing alongside our officers, right? So we're shoulder to shoulder in this. This is a community organization. We want our communities to be a part of this with our athletes because, like you said at the very beginning, they all just want to be included. We're all the same. They want the same things we want, and we're not going to let one disability define them or one diagnosis define them. They deserve every opportunity that those typical developing individuals like ourselves get every single day.
Well, and you talk about some of the events then too. It's the events themselves; those are they're big deals. Everybody, for example, here in Maryland, every year when we do the polar plunge in the Chesapeake Bay, and it's a massive event. I mean, it's now expanded into there's a police plunge, a specific police plunge. There's a cool schools plunge where K-12 students come and do it. There's the general plunge. There's super plungers that go in every hour for 24 hours into the bay, which is just I can't wrap my head around that. I'll do the polar bear plunge,
I'm with you there.
But but these events are really fantastic and they raise a lot of awareness. And, I think it does highlight that connection between law enforcement and the community. So I'm curious about some other events, maybe that you all have in Texas that I'm not as familiar with, like fire truck pulls. That's a new one for me. I would love to hear more about that. But, how do these events really bring the communities together? Why are they so powerful?
I think these events, there are ways that people might want to come out, maybe who have felt uncomfortable coming to a Special Olympics event because maybe some people just feel like maybe I can't, maybe that's not for me. I'm not a community engagement officer, but I'll run. or I'll jump in a pool. I know the very first event that I ever hosted here at DPD was the torch run. And we only had a handful of athletes come out, but that was the first time that a lot of those officers had ever interacted with someone with ID. And I think what's really, really cool is seeing, literally watching the like preconceived notions just like melt off the faces of these officers. Like, oh, like they're having a conversation with me. They're actually running faster than I am. Wow, that's amazing. So I think when they see things like that, that makes them like, okay, this is cool. Like this guy like is cool. I can have a conversation with him. I mean, they're all of course different levels of abilities, but I think that's something that really kind of surprises people, but really keeps people coming back for more. It's just, I think they just don't know what to expect. So there's that level of fear from the unknown. But the very first time, like I said, they come out, they're gonna interact with them. So we do the torch run. We also do polar plunges, and sometimes we hop on to other agencies who do a fire truck pull. Like you said, these are huge undertakings of events. So the planning is extensive. So sometimes we can only plan so many events, but we all work together up here. All the agencies, we're on the same team. We're raising money for the same goal. So we'll hop onto a neighboring department's fire truck pool. And so that's a way that, okay, maybe we'll get the SWAT guys to come out. Maybe they didn't want to jump into icy cold waters, but they want to show off their muscles. So they're going to come out and they're going to pull the fire truck and they're going to pull alongside athletes. So there's different ways to get people involved. If we do something called Breakfast with Champions, which is just an hour-long event, we do once a year, and we bring community partners, we bring the schools in, we bring city leadership, we bring law enforcement, and everyone comes to a table, has a breakfast, and hears stories. But that's a way to get like a lot of our administrative people to come in, a way to get command staff to come and hear the stories. So we host different events so that way different types of people can come and observe, the beauty and the magic that is Special Olympics.
One of the things I love to see too is the variety of officers that are involved. Thinking back to, again, my experience up here in Maryland, we have, when we do the polar bear plunge, for example, we have, people in the academy, whole academy classes come and do it. So it builds from the ground up. And then we have, chiefs that are leading in, their trainees and, folks like that. Then we also have things like cops on rooftops and, where money is raised, where police chiefs sit on top of Dunkin' Donuts for, 24 hours and raise money. So just the variety of different people involved, I think is always really special to see. And I love, what you said about the fire truck pool with, different ways to engage different types of officers. And I think that's the important piece that, we all can do better on in a variety of different ways. So I love to hear you talk about that.
Right. And then with the fire truck pull as well. So we call it the law enforcement torch run, right? That was started back in the 80s. It did start with police officers. However, it's about all first responders. We want to get fire involved. We want to get rescue involved. We have military veterans. We want everyone who is considered a first responder. And that includes, our non-sworn professional staff that work for any of these agencies as well. We want everyone to come and get involved. So things like the fire truck pull is, we've really grown our relationship with our Dallas Fire Rescue. And so now I have them joining the run. We want to talk about doing a fire truck pull in the future because that's a way that they can host their own event and really kind of take ownership over that. It's not just about our police. Because really, I think, Jordan, the numbers, right? If every single officer came, we still wouldn't have enough to partner with all of the athletes because we have so many athletes. So we want everyone to get involved. Everyone come join the party. It's going to be a great time.
No, I love that. I didn't realize that about the number of athletes too, compared to law enforcement involved.
Yeah, I mean, Texas is huge, right? We're very proud of that. We know that
everything's bigger in Texas, I hear.
Listen, seventh generation native Texan over here. I'll claim that all day. But we have so many athletes in Texas, but it's not just Texas, right? This is a global movement. There are still even, countries overseas, there's still communities that may not know what the law enforcement torch run is, or they may not know about Special Olympics. And so being able to have these two entities combined and going out into communities and trying to spread awareness for this. This is how that movement has grown. And so, we say it in Texas, if I had every agency from fire to police to our counties, if we could get them all involved, I still don't think we would have a good 1-to-1 ratio because of how many athletes and individuals with an ID diagnosis we have. Like I said, we have our school program, our Unified Champion Schools program, our young athletes. So we're talking a broad range of ages that we serve and people we serve.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Open now. Without Warning, Ending the Terror of the DC Snipers is the museum's latest exhibit that immerses visitors in those haunting weeks and the extraordinary investigation that followed. See the modified Chevy Caprice used by the gunman, the rifle that terrorized the region, photos of the victims, and chilling 911 recordings. The exhibit captures the tension, uncertainty, and human cost of the attacks. Get your tickets now using the link in the episode description. And now back to the show.
What does it mean to athletes and their families to see law enforcement and public safety more broadly even, but law enforcement specifically, not just supporting Special Olympics, but really celebrating them, sort of on that more personal type level? What does it mean? What does it look like? And what does it mean to families and athletes?
So, I have a personal tie into Special Olympics. I've been involved in one way or another for the last 26 years. And that goes back to, I'm from a real small town in the Hill Country here in Texas. And a good friend of mine, their sister, her name is Sarah. That's that is my buddy. She is awesome. She is a person with Down syndrome. And our town just rallied around her and some of our other athletes. And, we're talking decades ago. And, some of the resources available now weren't available then, especially in a small town where I'm from, right? You have to drive 45 minutes just to get to the next major city. And we, to see our law enforcement and our firefighters, right? And we're near Lackland Air Force Base. We're about 45 minutes from San Antonio. To even see some of our military members come out there and support our athletes, the look on Sarah's face, on all of our other friends' faces, even back then, how happy they were when they were there. I mean, that'll just get you, right? I don't have a child with an ID diagnosis, but I have a lot of friends, and I don't just call them athletes. I mean, they are my friends. And so to see all of them light up to when our first responders and our LAT are out there, I mean, it means everything. But then to also hear the stories of the families, the parents, the caregivers, the grandparents, right? I hear so many stories on a daily basis about what it means to have our LETR out there supporting them and knowing that they are there for them, and we do things now here in Texas. I do a unified LETR academy with one of our sheriff's departments and some of our other agencies. And we bring in a number of athletes, and they get to go through a mini version of like a citizens police academy. And so they get to learn what it's like to be an officer, and we call them recruits, right? And so the parents and the family members get to be a part of that too. They get to, sit by firsthand and watch it. And it just continues to strengthen that relationship. So I think from a family standpoint, it's knowing that they have that support from our law enforcement. From our athlete standpoint, whether they can verbalize it or not, you can see it in their expressions. Our athletes communicate in a number of ways. We have one athlete who uses a device to communicate. And every time I see him at our statewide games, the first thing he's asking is, where's officer so-and-so? Where's officer so-and-so? Is my buddy here? Right. And so we know that connection goes so much farther, and it's deeper than just raising money. That's a big part of it, but it's the relationships that are most important. And it just, like I said, it means the world to them.
Yeah. And I can kind of speak to that from the family side. Maybe I'm trying to think what year it was, maybe 21 or 22. I went down to the International Torch Run Conference, and I took my family with me. And so my youngest with Down syndrome, he was maybe 2 or 3 at the time. And these amazing officers who were in their uniform, he just like ran up to them. And so they took a lot of pictures. And of course, he's adorable. So those pictures went everywhere. And come to find out, a couple years later, I went to the next Torch Run conference, and they had actually taken one of those pictures and put it up on one of the banners that they had placed all around the conference. So there was a picture of him and this amazing officer from the Virginia State Police. Her name is Amber Dunn. And so I just thought that was the coolest thing. So we got pictures with it, and I like, wow, that's amazing. My kid is on, one of these banners. That's so cool. And then I am just standing in the middle of a room. At one point, I'm just talking to some people, and she walks by. It's been years. She probably doesn't remember me, but she walks by, and I look at her and I say, "It's you." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, what?" Like, I don't fangirl over cops, right? Like, I am a cop. I grew up with a dad who's a cop. Like, I have been around cops my whole life, but I was 100% a parent in that moment. I said, "It's you." And I immediately like started crying. And because she was the one who took my kid and she treated him like a human, you know. Like, I can just tell you, like, as a mom, that means everything. So it means a lot to answer your question.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. That shows the powerful connection that can be made, and and helping to break down stereotypes, and building relationships, and seeing just how impactful things are to people, and how it impacts them on a personal level. I mean, I think one of the things that sometimes we lose in law enforcement, if depending on how our careers go, is that idea of shared humanity, even, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where sometimes it's easy to sort of get jaded, and the system constantly messes things up, and all of these things that we've all
Mm-hmm.
heard as law enforcement or experienced. But um examples like the one you just gave are so powerful, because it brings that back and it makes it real, and you start to remember why you do this job, right? It's not about seeing how fast you can drive, and with lights and
Mm-hmm.
siren, and all those sorts of things that the public sort of expects us to as why we get into law enforcement, right? But it brings it back to the why of, we just want to help people, right? We want to make sure that
Yeah.
communities are safe, that families are safe, that we can do our part in society to do that. And I think sometimes we lose that, that idea, and we lose our why of why we got into law enforcement in the first place. And stories like the one you just shared, I'm sure that she felt so impacted by that moment as well, right? Where it is a reminder of just all the good that can be done in this profession. And sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
think we forget about that as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have to make a correction. It's Illinois State Police. So
Okay.
thank you, Jordan, for correcting me.
Got you.
No, all good. I'm sure there are some wonderful folks in Virginia State Police too.
You know what? They're great too.
Yeah, they're awesome. Y'all's liaison in Virginia, man. She's great. We love Ellen.
No, but I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that story. That's fantastic. And
It took me by surprise. And then my husband took a picture. He took a picture of me doing the most ugly cry. And I was actually presenting the next day. So my husband and I were doing a family presentation at the Law Enforcement Torture Run Conference, just about the impact of the torch run and its impact on officers and families. And like, I'm an ugly crier, but I put the picture in the slideshow, last minute. I'm like, listen, like, to just bring it all home. Like, this is the impact that each of you have the opportunity to make on individuals and their families. Because sometimes, and I've shared this with a lot of officers, we focus so much on the athletes, but the families are just like this unsung hero. There's this constant stress. And so that's one thing that I feel like I can bring as an officer. I can humanize those families who so oftentimes go, with this, it's a thankless job, and it's a never ending job. This is a lifelong commitment. This doesn't stop when your child turns 18. This is for life. So I try to recognize those families as well, let the parents know, like, hey, you can take a break. We've got this for, the next hour. Just relax and just sit back and watch your kid and just love them and be proud of them and just watch how amazing they are. And just to kind of let, I love that. So of course we love our interactions with the athletes, but I like to really connect with the parents and family members as well, because I feel like that is something that goes unnoticed. So it brings just a sense of fulfillment to me that I'm able to provide that to them, and that safety and security, and just also that appreciation for them.
Yeah, there's a program called the MATP, so the Motor Activity Program. Here in Texas, though, we have renamed that to Fundamentals. And I'm going to piggyback off Lieutenant's story a little bit about having the parents kind of take a step back. So Fundamentals is a program, or MATP, depending on, where you are with Special Olympics and what state or country you live in. But that is for our athletes that have more severe and profound disabilities, multiple impairments. And what you see at Fundamentals is you see a lot of switches. We have Bell Flight here is headquartered out of Fort Worth. Their engineering group had built some stuff for us. We have some robotics teams at different high schools that have built some switches and gauges for us. And so we have some athletes who they utilize a wheelchair to get around, and they may have a more severe diagnosis of say cerebral palsy. And, maybe the only thing that they can do is just move their right or left hand just enough to hit a switch. And that switch will kick a soccer ball, or it will turn on, say a leaf blower to blow an inflatable volleyball over the net, or it'll shoot a basketball. Or, there is powerlifting that we can, adjust for those athletes. So there's all these different sports that we have in Special Olympics that we can modify to bring into Fundamentals. And about 3 years ago, when I first came on staff, we went to our state winter games, and I had found out that we didn't have as many law enforcement, really maybe one or two, to be quite honest with you, that would volunteer and go to Fundamentals and support those athletes. And so this is the only time, and Lieutenant Renfro could hopefully say this is the only time, but as the coordinator on staff who works with all the law enforcement, it was the only time where I said, you're showing up in uniform and you're going to Fundamentals. If you're coming to winter games and you're in my region, which is the North region, you're going to show up and you're going to support these athletes. And then you can still go to all of the other sports with our other athletes, of course, but those fundamental athletes deserve the same support. And, it wasn't to any fault of our LETR, right? They just didn't really know about fundamentals. But one of the things that I kind of did not tell them was, you're going to get partnered up with these athletes and be their unified partner, because I want those parents and those family members and caregivers to have a chance to take a step back and just watch, take as many photos and videos, and just take a break. And all of my LETR folks that were there, they showed up, they were in uniform, and I hopefully didn't make anybody mad when I told them that, but they came. And I said, okay, we went through, this is what fundamentals is. My colleague Renee, and her group, they explained everything and how our officers were going to go through each station. And they said, okay, who wants to be paired up? And next thing I know, it was hand raise here. And our officers they stepped up and said, okay, I'll be a partner for this athlete. None of them knew they were going to get a medal as a unified partner. So that was a really fun surprise for them at the very end. But that has also just completely spurred this moment where we have so many officers who have created relationships with those fundamental athletes that they ask for them. Every state games that we have fundamentals, or our regional or area competitions, those parents, those caregivers, and even those athletes, because they do communicate with us, ask where is officer so-and-so? Where's my partner? Is he or she going to be there? And we had an officer here from the department, from Dallas PD, who he just won Officer of the Year, correct? Yep. Mm-hmm. And his fundamentals partner, Jennifer, wrote a letter of support for this. So that again just shows what our LETR can do, and how we can help those families take a step back. And we have a line out the door of officers now because they hear about how awesome fundamentals is. And so not only do we have officers that are unified partners, like with DPD Unified and other departments across Texas that are doing this, now we have a line out the door at all of our statewide competitions for these officers to get paired up with our fundamental athletes.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I love hearing successes like that. That's really amazing. And one of the things that I'm curious about too is, so, in law enforcement, we're always looking for leadership lessons and, things like that, that we can take back to our departments and, use in our own career development and, all those sorts of things. I would guess that there are plenty of leadership type lessons that can be learned from engaging with Special Olympics and with the athletes. And I'm curious what you think, are some of those leadership lessons that you can take back into everyday service.
I think volunteering for Special Olympics is really about putting yourself aside and becoming a part of something that's much bigger than you are. It really kind of emphasizes the focus on, it's not about me. And I'm not here for my own furtherance. I'm not here for, command staff to see me doing this and be impressed by me and promote me or anything like that. I think it's really about just kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. I feel like you kind of caught me off guard with this one. Yeah.
I apologize. It was just
no, you're
something that
okay.
sort of came, I think as you're thinking through that, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you see the athletes, right? And you're inspired by them and what they accomplish. And I think there are times when we overlook in law enforcement, we're always looking to the law enforcement leaders out there that are really front and center and, demonstrating how you should, be a leader within law enforcement. But I think there are a lot of other examples within our, our span of, existence.
Yeah.
I think Special Olympics athletes are certainly one of those places that we can look to sort of learn from and how to interact with people and all those sorts of things.
Well, so I go out to the academy probably twice a year just to make sure that I at least get to get some face time with our recruits, because we always have a number of classes running year round. And one thing that I like to tell them is that when you come out to an event, I don't care what rank you are. I don't care how long you've been on. You could still be on training, or you could be a 45-year officer. Like, we have both. And when you come out, you don't, like, it's not a rank thing. So to me, it's not an exclusive group. This isn't just for our community engagement officers or our neighborhood patrol officers. I have never worked in either unit. I actually used to think that wasn't for me, until I realized, like, okay, it's okay to, like, not be so hard all the time. It's okay to step back and let people see you, see a softer side. But what's really important, I think, is that when you come out, none of that matters. Rank is pushed to the side. We have anywhere from truly, 1-year officers to executive assistant chiefs who have been on over 40 years come out to these events. So I think it really is about just realizing we're all one team. We're all one group. We're one unit. We're one family. It all gets pushed aside. So all the political stuff that you see, maybe at other events, I really try my hardest to keep it out of this. One thing is, I will never tell anyone they have to come. And another thing is, if it's on your day off, you're not going to get paid for it. I want to make sure people are there for the right reasons. Sometimes we can flex and sometimes we can work while we're on duty, kind of shift your schedule around, but I'm not going to pay you overtime for it. And that's really intentional for me, just to ensure that everyone's there for the right reasons and that we have the right people out there, because I can assure you the athletes will know if you're there for the right reason. They will see it on your face. Some other things is it just really it allows us to see things from a different angle. I know there's some things that I didn't really catch necessarily until, I became a parent or became, a law enforcement torch run officer. So some of the things we've done here that I'm really proud of, that I think have helped our department and have helped us grow, are policy changes, for example. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the campaign "Spread the Word to End the Word." So the R word is, a word that we don't like to use anymore. It was actually in federal and state policy up until, a handful of years ago. It was a word that at one point was acceptable, and it was used in medical terminology, but it has since been removed from both federal and at least the state of Texas, from all of our law books and all of our educational books. It is now a word that we don't use. However, not everyone's aware of that. And I'm just keenly aware because of, my child and what I do. But so seeing that, I had the opportunity to go through all of our policy and make sure that was updated and language was removed, and, to reflect current terminology and current acceptable terms like intellectual disability. There's certain words that we use. We don't use MHMR anymore. There's a lot of words that we don't use. And, through no fault of anybody else, it's just kind of one of those things when you don't live that life, you don't catch it. So I think it's really allowed me to kind of bring that, and it makes me feel really proud. Honestly, I printed up, the general order change and stuck it on my wall at work, because it's just something I'm really, really proud of. And honestly, a lot of people, they didn't know. And it allows us to kind of, educate people in a way that's kind, And on most people, I will say, if I say something to somebody like, hey, maybe you don't use that word, they're just like, oh, I didn't know. Like, that's how I was trained. I was trained to use that word. But I think it's really helped bring a lot of growth to our officers. They when they are around these individuals, and they catch themselves every now and then, maybe saying something they shouldn't say. But then when they come back and they own that, I think that's a sign of true strength and leadership. They own that. I've actually had an officer come up to me and say, I'm so sorry. I realized I said a word that I shouldn't have said. I just was used to it. I used it in high school, but they realize now, the impact that has. And I've seen that from so many officers. I can't even tell you how many, just really, really great, like personal growth that I've seen amongst officers in our department who get out and volunteer.
I think one of the things that, I'm struck by is, constantly this thought of people feel like they have to be on eggshells or something, but that's really not it. It's learning, it's growing, learning why the R word is, for example, so offensive, and why we shouldn't be using it. It's not about trying to shame somebody into not using a word or anything. It's learning about that word and learning of the power of that word, and why we shouldn't use it. And I think that's the perfect sort of example of, how we in law enforcement do have the ability to grow and change, and Special Olympics is one of those places where we can grow and learn and change and develop better relationships with communities. And it just makes everything better, right? There's a lot of anger, about, in the world, and it's not a political statement or anything like that. That has always sort of existed. And I think maybe the older I get, I'm more interested in how we get to a place of just, let people live, right? And just, if they don't, if you learn that a word is offensive to somebody, then just don't use that word. It's not an
It seems
attack
so
on
easy.
you or anything, right? It's
Yeah.
just, it's growth, right? And I think we all have the ability to grow, and I think and learn. And I think if we're doing that, that's a leadership win, right? And a
Absolutely.
leadership lesson, and something we can all be proud of. So that's fantastic that you all have done that. So for this has been a really great conversation. I'm really really just grateful to you both for taking the time out of your day to be here and talk about this. And I'm curious. I think a lot of folks within law enforcement do know about Special Olympics and the special relationship, but there are a lot that don't. In a lot of communities around the country and around the world, like you said earlier, that don't understand that, don't know about that important relationship and how important it is. So I'm wondering, for agencies or officers or community members for that matter that are interested in getting involved, and what would you say to them to encourage them to take that first step to get involved, and how should they go about doing that, do you think?
You want me to take that one?
Yeah, you go ahead.
All right. So there's a number of ways, right? For community members, I would say, for those that are listening, go to your Special Olympics website. So your state website, if you're, in the United States. If you're not, you can go to the Special Olympics, international website, and you can find where there is Special Olympics programs, the state program, or within your country. You can find that information and reach out. For the law enforcement side and for our first responders, there are liaisons. So we're called coordinators here in Texas, but we're liaisons. So we work for that Special Olympics program. So I work for Special Olympics Texas, and my primary role is the law enforcement torture run coordinator for the North region. And so you can get connected through LETR. You can go to letr.org, which is the international site for law enforcement torture run. Get connected that way. There's contact information. You can figure out what region we're split into. I believe it's like actually don't, we're split into at least 13 regions. I don't say, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's 13 regions. So you can go onto the letr.org website. You can figure out what region you fall in. And then there's actually contact information for those on the executive council. It will also, give you information on within your state program or within your country program. My contact information is listed all over the Special Olympics Texas website, along with my other colleagues who are coordinators here in Texas, because we're so big. We have 5 coordinators. We're split into 5 regions. But I think the biggest thing is, no matter what, we have over 30 Olympic type sports that we offer. This is not a one-time event. This goes on year round. Like you said, there's polar plunges. We do polar plunges. We do fire truck pools. We have statewide competitions, fall, winter, spring. Most every program has that in some form or another. So if you love to bowl or you're interested in going to bowling, go to a bowling competition. It doesn't cost anything for you to go and volunteer, right? Just take some time out of your day if you can. So that's what I would say if you want to get involved. I'll also speak on the law enforcement side. You don't have to be a community engagement officer. For me personally, I work with probably over 120 something departments just here in North Texas, and I run the gamut. I have deputy fire chiefs that are my primary point of contact for their department. I have executive assistant chiefs. I have lieutenants. I have people who are in, they're over capers unit, major crimes. I have a SWAT officer who is my primary point of contact for one of my largest departments. I have some community engagement, some, NPOs as well. I have professional staff. For some of my departments, they have somebody that they hired on, their professional staff member, and they're that coordinator. So I run the gamut of who I have, depending. I mean, like Lieutenant Renfro said, it's really not about rank, but I do have some chiefs that's who I work with. I have SWAT. I mean, I have capers. I have it all. I think I had ICAC at one point. Mm-hmm. We had some ICAC folks that were helping out too. So, it's really for anyone. You do not have to be in community engagement to do this. So letr.org, or go to your state website. For law enforcement and first responders, for our community members, just go to specialolympicsorg. If you're in Texas and you're listening, sotx.org, shameless plug. Mm-hmm. So
what I like to tell, sometimes I'll speak to, chiefs and stuff, like when I'm talking to, like maybe at an ICP conference or something like that, when I'm speaking to command staff, this is what I say. Like, you have to support your officers. You have to just allow them to participate, encourage participation. Even if this isn't for you personally, just know that your department will benefit from your officers being involved. Unfortunately, there's been some incidents, across the country where we've seen people with ID have negative interactions with officers. And sometimes I wonder, if those officers had volunteered for Special Olympics, would it have ended up that way? Would they have been so quick, to use force in the way they did? Or maybe they got angry because they felt like this person wasn't communicating with them, or they were being rude or disrespectful, when truly they communicate in a different way. So this is something that I try to push, honestly, really hard. It's just a different perspective for the chiefs and command staff to have, even if it's not for you. Allow your officers to step away every now and then. Allow them to get involved. I promise you, it will benefit your department. It's great PR, for the people who care about that and they want to put pictures and videos online. It looks really good, but your officers are going to walk away better people. They're going to walk away more empathetic, more patient. They're going to learn how to talk to people. You can go to all the critical incident training in the world. Nothing is going to teach you how to interact with someone with ID other than truly just going out and interacting, and it being in just a safe environment outside of a, hot police call where our adrenaline's up, just somewhere where you can relax, be yourself, let your guard down, and just have a conversation with somebody who's different than you. It's truly life-changing. It really is. So that's my little push that I like to give to, executive staff. Just let them do it. I promise you it'll pay dividends.
I love that. And I think that's the perfect note to sort of leave with. It's an officer safety and wellness issue too, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this can Absolutely. Impact officer wellness and content with the job and, all of these things. I think that's so important. And I love the way you frame that, for getting buy-in. So hopefully folks out there will take you up on that and allow their folks to participate. And we'll definitely include links and things like that in the show notes. And we'll include Special Olympics Texas specifically as well. No shameless plugs. It's
Awesome.
just much
Yeah,
appreciated.
I mean, if anyone reaches out, right, we can connect them with whoever that LETR person is in that state or that country. We're a big family. I think it's important for me to kind of end on this is since its inception, since LETR started many decades ago, we as in not me, as in our law enforcement, they have helped raise over $1 billion with a B. So over $1 billion. And all of that is 100% was donated back to Special Olympics. So through state programs, through programs within their country. So yes, it's about the relationships. Yes, it's about raising funds and, all of that. But that is the impact that these officers have had on our athletes since it started. So I think that is something, really important, but we can connect them and have some, it's a lot of fun. Get involved. It's so much fun. You will have so many high fives. Your arm's going to get tired if you're going out to state games, high fiving thousands of athletes. You're going to laugh. I have the most belly aching laughs with our athletes, especially, when they get into their competitive mode and, they're just like us. They like to talk trash and have a lot of fun and, shoot, they just have so much fun. So you're going to have a lot of fun. So get involved, come to one event. Like Lieutenant Renfro said, I mean, you're not going to regret it at all.
Yeah, the hugs are you both, I think, referenced the hugs earlier on, but that's, there's nothing like a hug from an athlete at Special Olympics. It's just, everything wrapped up in that one moment is just incredible. It's an incredible feeling. And I think that's one of the things that stands out to me most about this conversation is that the partnership between Special Olympics and law enforcement is not transactional, it's human. It's about showing up, standing together, and recognizing the dignity and potential in every single person. Special Olympics reminds us that community is strongest when everyone belongs, and law enforcement's longstanding commitment to this movement shows how service can look like celebration, encouragement, and genuine connection. To both of you, to Lieutenant Renfro and Jordan, thank you both for your leadership, your passion, and for reminding us what's possible when people unite for good. And to our listeners, whether you wear a badge, support Special Olympics, or simply believe in inclusive communities, this is a partnership that's definitely worth celebrating. Thanks for listening to Precinct 444, and we'll see you next time.
Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the Precinct.